this build, I'm going to be using a big piece of 1/2-inch plywood and then another big piece of 1/4-inch plywood. Okay, so since this is modeled after the Vector, it's a bullpup design, which means if it were a crossbow, the rail length would, like with my regular mechanism that's just pulling and it just pushes it up, the trigger or the notch point would have to be right there, which isn't a very long it's not a very long rail length. So what I figured out is doing a 3-piece trigger mechanism which pushes it back about another 6 to 7 inches. So this is a pivot point here, and this is one whole piece. It looks like a weird T. Pull this, pushes up on that, which pushes down on that, which pushes that up, pushing the string over the notch, catches the bolt and shoots. So now I'm going to cut it out with a jigsaw. Now that I have the first layer cut out, I'm going to cut out this inside piece. To actually get in here with the jigsaw, I'm going to need to drill a hole in this corner and in that corner. I might even do it at these, probably this corner. Yeah, I think this corner and this corner I'll drill holes, and then I can just drop the jigsaw blade in the hole and then just cut from there. Take advantage of the really flat sides of the plywood, because that's what I'm going to be using for my rails, and they're just completely flat. Because if you're going to make the rails like just cutting it out of the center of this, the rails probably would be a little curvy and it would really mess up the accuracy of the crossbow. Now I'm just going to trace this out again and then cut it out again with the jigsaw. Okay, since when you trace this out, the marker isn't going to be like perfect on the line, so this is actually a little, like the tiniest little bit bigger than this, so I'm going to put the jigsaw and just try my best to cut to the left of the line, like more towards the inside, so that it's as much in line to this, so that when I clamp it all together, it's not going to be as jagged as much, and I won't have to file it and grind it so that it's all level. Alright, now I'm going to draw out the trigger mechanism onto a piece of paper so that I can cut it out of some 1/4-inch steel or plywood. Probably plywood. Now I'm just going to cut it out using a razor blade. Now I'm just going to trace out the 3 trigger pieces onto this 1/4-inch plywood. Now I'm just going to cut these out with the jigsaw. Now I have the 3 trigger pieces clamped up in the vise with protection on either side, because I don't want the jagged edges of the vise to crush the really thin plywood. So now I'm going to drill through these holes with a drill. Okay, so this is how the trigger is going to work. I'm going to pull on this, and this is going to push it that way, pushing this up, pushing this down, pushing this up, which pushes the string over the notch, catching the bolt. Now I'm going to trace this and cut it out again, but on 1/4-inch plywood. But there's a catch. When I do this, when I cut it out, or when I trace it out, I'm going to trace it out fully and then draw a line under it, so that when you put it all together, it will have the 2 pieces here, the 2 wider pieces, and then in the middle will be the 1/4-inch piece, but it will be like a 1/4-inch down, making a channel all the way down the rail. Okay, now that I have traced this out, I'm going to take the straight edge of this and drop it about a 1/4-inch, 3/8 of an inch, around there, and then drop here. Alright, so I have the placement of my trigger pieces just like not countersinked, marked out with a, I just kind of drilled it in with a screwdriver a little bit, so there's holes there, and now I'm just going to drill all the way through with the Dremel tool. So take the middle layer or the 1/4 inch layer and put on the trigger, and then just draw a line about here, and here, or try to get it as close as you can to the piece, and then you can take that off and then cut out that area. Also do this line and save this piece, save the handle. Just cut out this colored piece. Okay, so now I'm just going to glue all the pieces together. Now that it's all glued together and clamped up, we're just going to wait for this to dry. Okay, slight change to the trigger mechanism. I put on a set of limbs and I pulled it back to here, which was the 3-piece trigger mechanism, and the trigger just didn't have enough power to push it up over the notch. So what I did is I made another set of limbs that's shorter, making it more powerful, and just pulled this back to the front, so it's just the first piece of the 3-piece trigger mechanism, which is also works by itself. So if you pull this back, this pushes up and pushes it over the notch. It just looks like a T, but with a little bit of a curved thing, so it all works now, and it's extremely powerful. To put on the set of limbs, I need the front of this body to be extremely flat and 90 degrees to the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a chop saw and chop off about 1 centimeter of the front. Perfectly flat. Okay, so it's Christmas morning, and I was opening a box and cut my finger open and had to get 5 stitches. So for the arrow clasp, I'm going to be using PVC because it's really springy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it down the middle, only on one side, so that I can then heat it over the stove and flatten it out. And since this is like, I think 1-inch PVC or 1.5-inch PVC, it'll flatten out really wide, and then I will cut my arrow clasp out of that rectangle piece and then form it to the body of the crossbow and give it the curve to hold down the arrow. Or bow, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. To cut the PVC down the middle, I'm just going to be using a hacksaw. Switching to the jigsaw, but I can't hold it straight to this because it'll go all the way through, so I'll just hold it up a little bit.
That's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change.
So I drew out this T. It's just 1 inch by 1 inch squares here and here, and then here this is 1.25 inches wide, and it's about 4 or 5 inches long. I think it's 5 inches long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out and then bend these 2 squares downwards and then make this into the arrow clasp. Now I'm going to cut this out with the angle grinder.
World, it keeps spinning around. I've been a puppet, a pauper, a pirate, a poet, a pawn and a king. I've been up and down and over and out. And I know one thing, each time I find myself.
Alright, so I just put on the arrow clasp. I just drilled really small holes right there and then just put some nails through. And I did that on either side. Now, you take a bolt. I don't want to draw it back, so I'm just going to put it right under the string. Holds down the bolt really well. Now I'm going to really shape the crossbow. This is probably going to take the longest step out of all of them. I'm going to take the router and just make these edges all aligned and straight, round out the handle, the files, and then sandpaper all of it, just just fix it up altogether. Now that it's fully functional, I'm going to work on comfort and aesthetics.
Now that the aesthetics are done, I'm gonna go test it out.
I'm gonna roll myself up in a big ball. Hey.